Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wrestling with Wrestling. As always, I am joined by the great Doc Gregory, the best damn referee in all of independent wrestling. And we have plenty to talk about in this episode. We have the Royal Rumble to cover. We have Raw from last night. We have the direction that things seem to be going as far as WrestleMania 30. Elimination Chamber, the completely pointless February pay-per-view. Um, and I'll be honest right up front. I don't know. Doc and I haven't discussed this before right now, so I don't know what he has to say. I'm gonna have a lot of negative things to say.
Yeah, well, I
So
mean, honestly, why don't you go ahead and you cover your viewpoint of
okay,
what you thought of the Royal Rumble, and then I will pick up from there and tell you what I thought.
okay. Well, that sounds good. What I was since most of mine is going to be negative, I did at least want to start with some of the positive things because there were some positive things at both the Royal Rumble show and on Raw last night that I feel like I want to stress the stuff that I like before I get into bitching about the stuff that I don't like. Uh, the Daniel Bryan Bray Wyatt match at the Rumble show was awesome. It was an excellent match. It was the best singles match I think Bray Wyatt has ever had. Uh, I have no complaints about that match at all. I have no complaints about Bryan losing that match. I have no complaints about Bray going over. Obviously, they're positioning him to work with Cena next. So him beating Bryan in a hard-fought match, uh, I have no complaints about that at all, and it was an amazing match. So that's the first positive. The second positive is we've mentioned a few times on the show already, and I think Doc and I are both appreciating how this guy is coming along, and that's Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns' build continues to progress in a really cool, really well done, strong way. That Superman punch, man, when he finally breaks away from the Shield and they turn him babyface, that has got to be his finish. That Superman punch is awesome, and it's been so cool to watch him come along from like last year when the Shield first debuted on the main roster, and Roman was sort of like the big guy that you could tell he was kind of being protected. They put him with Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, who were both really solid workers, and he didn't talk very much, and he didn't do a whole lot in the ring, and he was sort of like how Jim Cornette used to describe Kevin Nash. Like, he has 5 moves, and that includes the hair flip. Uh, but he has really, but he has really come along. I mean, he is really, for a guy his size and for a guy with his relatively limited experience, he is really becoming good in the ring. He has a couple of spots like the Superman punch, which I keep talking about, which is awesome, which is going to be his people's elbow. There's no doubt about it. Then he does that incredible drop kick from the floor up onto the apron, where the guy is like laying with his head underneath the ropes, and he does this running, diving drop kick, and he hits the guy in the head and lands like up on the apron. Such a cool move. So he's coming along great. I love the continued tease with the dissension between the Shield, the 3 members, and how Dean is sort of going crazier and crazier and becoming more of an egomaniac, and you can tell Roman kind of chafing at that, and all of that stuff is great. All that stuff is great. So now for the negative stuff. Here's what I don't get. I don't get what it's going to take for the creative in the WWE to realize that when the fans chant for Daniel Bryan, and it's everybody now, it's not just a tiny segment of the crowd, it's not just in certain cities, it's everywhere. Because at the Rumble they were in Pittsburgh, at Raw last night they were in Cleveland. Wherever they go, you get the Daniel Bryan chants, you get the yes chants, hijacking the show. It's been happening every week for months now. These people don't want to see Daniel Bryan just trotted out in front of them so they can see him. They want him to be the man. They want him to be the guy, the top guy, the champion, the guy that they want him to be the John Cena now. And I just don't think that creative in the company has realized that. They put him into the Elimination Chamber match on Raw last night. They set it up so that he will be one of the 6 guys in the chamber fighting for the title. But I just have this feeling that what's going to happen is, because I've heard like Dave Meltzer says, and the various wrestling journalists and inside sources, however reliable they are, say that the match they have sketched in for Bryan at WrestleMania at this point is with Sheamus. And Sheamus is a terrific wrestler. I have no quarrel with Sheamus at all. I like Sheamus. I thought it was cool when Sheamus won the Rumble a couple years ago. I was really happy for him. But nobody wants to see Daniel Bryan wrestle Sheamus at WrestleMania. Nope, nobody gives a fuck about that match. And what I feel like they're setting up is they're going to be in the chamber. Sheamus is going to turn on Bryan, is going to do something to cost him the title, and then that'll be the setup for their WrestleMania match. And nobody is going to buy that because they don't want Bryan to be in the Elimination Chamber. They want him to win. They don't want him to just have a match at WrestleMania. They want him to be in the main event. That's what people want. That's why they chant his name, not because they just want to see him. They want him to be the man. They don't, and they're getting tired of seeing the gun loaded and unloaded this many times. They want to see somebody pull the trigger. You know, that's the problem with Daniel Bryan. And it seems like they still haven't got that message. I mean, it was nice to see Triple H come out on Raw and actually kind of work heel a little bit. Like, he actually heel on the crowd when he said, "Oh, did somebody not get what they wanted?" Like, he was actually acting like a heel. You know, I like that. But now they have to do something. They have to give the people what they want. And when it's in a case like this where it's so obvious that this is what they want, and they don't want anything else. They shit on John Cena and Randy Orton's match at the Rumble. I mean, they shit all over that match. They chanted for everybody but the 2 guys in the ring. And they shit all over the Rumble as soon as they realized that Bryan wasn't coming out. You know, he lost to Bray Wyatt in that really awesome match, and everybody figured, including me, when I first saw the show, I thought, okay, maybe this means he's coming out for the Rumble. They didn't advertise him for the Rumble, but he's their hottest guy. He just lost clean in a match. It's the first match of the night. Maybe he's coming out in the Rumble. Maybe they finally come to their senses. And that didn't happen. And as soon as Rey Mysterio came out as the last guy at the Rumble, it's like the entire live crowd just totally checked out. They just could not have cared less about what was going on because they knew that their guy wasn't going to be there. And no matter who would have won, they turned on Batista when he actually won, but no matter who it was, they wouldn't have bought it. Unless toward the end they seemed like they had sort of attached themselves to Roman Reigns. There was a Roman Reigns chant right at the end, right before Batista threw him out. Because I guess they figured, well, anybody but this guy. You know, anybody but the guy they're shoving down our throats. But I mean, how bad do you have to fuck up to get the crowd to turn on the Royal Rumble? I mean, it's one of the most beloved gimmick matches ever. It's one of the hardest matches to fuck up. Even kind of shitty Rumbles are usually fun matches. And for that crowd to boo the Royal Rumble, I mean, that's a pissed off wrestling crowd when they're booing the Royal Rumble. ECW fans wouldn't boo the Royal Rumble. And these people booed the Royal Rumble. That's how pissed off they were that their guy was not there. So I could go on, but Doc, let's hear your thoughts on the Rumble and Raw and etc.
Well, when it comes to the Royal Rumble, I guess I can say that I was thoroughly excited because when I looked down the results of the card, I think that most of the heels won the Royal Rumble that night. You know, I mean, you got the New Age Outlaws who took the belts from Cody Rhodes and Goldust, and you know they are acting heels, and they did it even more on Raw the next night. Bray Wyatt defeating Daniel Bryan, and you had Brock Lesnar beating the crap out of the Big Show and winning that match. Randy Orton defeated John Cena, and Batista, I'm only counting him as a heel because the fans are booing the shit out of him right now.
Right.
So, and on Raw the following night, which was hilarious because Batista comes down to interrupt Randy Orton, and Brock Lesnar, of course, comes down. But Batista is sitting there talking, and he hears that Daniel Bryan chant out in the audience, right? And instead of doing what he should have done, he did talk louder, which was nice. And it quieted down. when he did that. He talked louder. But then, you know, later on in the interview, he went straight back to that crowd and addressed Dan O'Brien and got him going again.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, and it's crazy. The crowds right now were crazy. I can credit the crowds because it is about entertaining the people who are watching the show. And sure enough, if you're chanting, if you're yelling, you are enjoying the show, and that's what they want. In a nutshell. So it's like whether you're booing or whether you're cheering, I think the crowd got their money's worth. You know, Royal Rumble, yeah, felt a little bit disappointing for me because, you know, I predicted last week that Batista was probably going to win the Royal Rumble because, you know, the WWE machine I'm fairly aware of, and I knew exactly what they were trying to do, and they were going to push it in that direction. So I was fairly disappointed in Batista winning the Royal Rumble. I think Roman Reigns would have been a great choice right there if they want to push him. But, you know, I think they're doing a pretty good job at holding out with Roman Reigns at this point, with the Shield not turning exactly yet, but showing that little bit of dissension. So I would think, you know, we'll push it to a point where there's a power struggle for the leadership of the Shield. And then that's where we can find that fracture and finally split that thing. New Age Outlaws, wow, they won the tag team championships for the 6th time. I mean, how amazing is that?
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Good matches, though. I'm telling you. I mean, the guys can still get the crowd going, and they work really good matches, you know, out there. So I thought that the match between them and Cody and Goldust during the pre-show was excellent, and I thought that the rematch there showed that, to me, it was really more of like, it's not your modern-day wrestling style because you got the Road Dogg, you got Billy Gunn, they're showing more of the old-school stuff, you know, getting in the corner, showing the referee, back that guy off, which is good psychology. And it was really good to see those guys back who are very familiar with the psychology of wrestling, wrestling with, you know, someone who also is familiar with Goldust and Cody, who should be familiar with psychology of wrestling, considering who the father is.
Right.
So it was really nice. I thought that matchup right there on Raw last night was one of the best matches of all night. Honestly, I think the best matches of Raw all night were the 2 tag team matches.
Oh, I agree. I agree completely. And you know, speaking of the New Age Outlaws, I was ready to sort of not like this run that they're having because I'm always of the mind of, you know, what are the old guys doing here when they have a roster full of like 60 guys that they don't have anything to do with, and now like why are the road agents coming in and winning titles? But the way that they're doing it, the way that Road Dogg and Billy are wrestling, I really like, because like you said, not only are they bringing some sort of old school, just really basic tag team psychology to their matches, but they're wrestling like older wrestlers who are a little bit out of their league. You know, they're doing like the stalling tactics. They're rolling out of the ring and talking to each other, and that's the kind of thing. I mean, the Outlaws always sort of did that. Even back in their prime, they would do that. But it's much better to do it that way, and it's easier to accept. Like if you suspend your disbelief and you imagine these guys are really fighting, it's much easier to buy the 40-something veterans who just came back from retirement hanging with the young guys if they're doing it that way, as opposed to the way they did it, like, for instance, when Hogan came back and wrestled Shawn Michaels, and they were pretending like it was 1984, and he was still Hulk Hogan instead of, like, an old man who could barely walk. They didn't acknowledge the reality of his physical situation at all, and it made the whole thing seem even sillier than it normally would have. Whereas the way Road Dogg and Billy are doing it, I mean, they're both still in really good shape too. I mean, but they're not walking out and getting in, you know, Cody Rhodes' face and acting like, you know, they're these legitimate badasses. They're more playing it smart, which I think is really cool. And how great is Goldust? I've been meaning to mention this the last couple of these shows we've done. Who would have ever thought, like a year ago, that in 2014, and for a lot of 2013, one of the best wrestlers on the roster would be Goldust. I mean, he
Yeah,
is so great.
I honestly thought that that Goldust was probably one of the biggest underrated characters that WWE has ever had. That he got in the very beginning. Dustin Rhodes got stuck with what I thought was kind of a very lame gimmick, but he
Yeah.
took that gimmick and he grew with that gimmick and accepted that gimmick and was very successful with that gimmick. And at this point, it's like nobody really cares, whether or not he's putting on the gold paint because they know who he is and they accept him for who he is. As far as the tag team matchup, well, yeah, you have two old timers, but then on the other side, you only got one young guy. The other guy
That's true.
is just on par with those old timers. He's been in that business for a long time too.
That's true. And there go. That's the perfect role, I think, for Dustin Rhodes at this point in his career. Uh, one of those other internet rumors that you hear is that they want to do Goldust versus Cody at WrestleMania. They want to have them break up, and I'm sure that would be a terrific match. But they're so great as a tag team because the best part about Goldust as a wrestler to me, and it's not like some great insight on my part. Lots of people have said this, is he has such an awesome comeback, and he knows exactly when to hit that comeback in the match, and that's such a great skill for a tag team wrestler to have, because Goldust can be the guy that you keep on the outside while they work over Cody, and then he gets that tag and comes in and cleans house. And he is so exciting in that mode, and he has such an awesome comeback. And he has for a long time, even back in WCW days before he was signed by WWF and became Goldust. He always had a really great comeback and a really great sense of timing of when to turn the match back to the babyface's side. And again, like you were saying about the tag team psychology, that's such a basic skill that you see a lot of even mediocre old school wrestlers have. They know when to turn the match, that you don't see as often nowadays. And maybe it's because they don't let guys lay out their own matches very much anymore. I mean, wrestling fans always bitch about how their promos are all scripted, but a lot of their matches are kind of scripted too, or at least the matches are sort of given to them. Someone else will lay out the match, and then they'll say, okay, here's what you guys are doing, as opposed to saying, okay, here's what we have to accomplish with this match. Now, what do you guys want to do? Which is the way that it used to be done more so in the old days.
Yeah, sure. As a promoter, if I was a promoter myself and I was running wrestling, I would strictly say, hey guys, I've been in the business long enough and I know what you can do. Honestly, a lot of these wrestlers, I've been in the ring with them and I've refereed so many of their matches that it's like if I put the straps back on right now, it's like, I can go toe to toe with you because I know everything you can do. I've watched you. But it's like simply I would say, here's what I want to see. I want to see you do this. This is the story really I want you to tell. Everything else you just fill in the void. You got 15 minutes and wrap it up. And I want you over.
Well, and the other thing about doing it that way is that's how people learn. Like you don't just walk into the ring your first time being a great wrestler, and by the same token, you don't pick up a microphone the first time and all of a sudden you're a great talker. You have to learn, you have to do it, you have to fuck up a few times and get better and better and better. And that's going back to Roman Reigns. That's one of the exciting things about watching him, is seeing how much better he gets each time he goes out there. And that's the great thing about watching a show like NXT, where you get to see the talent being developed. They get better and better each time, and they add things, and you see, okay, he's not doing that anymore. Okay, he's doing this now, and okay, this is starting to work for him. It's a cool thing to see, and you don't see it as often on the big show anymore because everything is sort of prepackaged. Like from the moment they walk on camera, they are who they're supposed to be, and there's not a lot of growth. You could say the same thing about Daniel Bryan. He is definitely a much different guy when he walks out now than he was even a year ago, and certainly than he was when they first brought him in. He has been allowed to grow and to evolve and to sort of get to the point where when he comes out and he talks to the people or he works a match, it seems like he's doing his own thing.
He's very comfortable. He's very comfortable right now with the crowd. Yeah. I mean, it's very simplistic. You know, he's just got to get out what he says. And I think he's being very realistic, and I believe, you know, that he is speaking from the heart, which it makes him more of a real character, which I like, which the crowd can get behind. They're identifying with that. But when it comes to his catchphrases, he's keeping it very simplistic, which is perfect for what I call the American fan base, because you know the American attention span is about, you know, that big. We all know that. So keeping it at yes and no works out perfectly. So Daniel Bryan definitely is doing the right thing. I agree with you absolutely 100% with Daniel Bryan. The crowd is there. They are not going away. And why, for some reason, the WWE cannot identify with that, I don't understand. Maybe they're just seeing if it lingers, you know, because it's like the heart will want more, you know, if you just let it wait longer and longer. But, you know, you got the biggest show of the year coming up, which is WrestleMania, and as it sits right now, you don't have Daniel Bryan in one of those main event. Well, in the main event, because there's only one belt to go for. I think that is an absolutely wrong move to have. It's WrestleMania 30. Honestly, you can cart out Hulk Hogan, you can cart out Roddy Piper, make some great nostalgic moments for WrestleMania, but at WrestleMania 30, it would be a moment to stamp a new movement in wrestling and go with what the fans want, and it's good for business. You're talking out your fucking ass if it's good for business, because what's good for business right now is what the fans are asking for, which is Daniel Bryan, or they would not be interrupting so many of your other matches, and to the point where they get freaking bored, where they're calling out the ring announcers or the commentaries. You know, they're calling out for JBL, they're calling out for Jerry Lawler, and calling out for Michael Cole during Alberto Del Rio's match, and Alberto got really pissed off at JBL for standing up.
For acknowledging it, yeah.
He did, and apparently someone else must have stood up because the crowd popped again, so I know someone else stood up, and I know right before they cut to commercial, I saw Jerry Lawler standing up.
Yeah.
Which is a huge no-no, but, you know, that is really where the crowd was. But it was just, to me, it's like the crowd to me was having fun at that point, but as a wrestler is ignorant into especially to Alberto Del Rio, who is a hell of a worker.
Oh, absolutely.
So and I would be upset about that.
If I were Del Rio, I would have been upset. If I were John Cena and Randy Orton, I would be upset. And I wouldn't be upset at the fans. I would be upset at Vince. I would be upset at Triple H. I would be upset at creative, at whoever is responsible for putting together this show that these live crowds do not want to see. Because, like you say, I mean, the fans are there. They want to be entertained. They're not getting the show that they want, so they're doing something both to let the company know that they don't like it, and also to entertain themselves while they're there. Mm-hmm. And to entertain those of us watching at home, because you're right, if the crowds hadn't been so animated and so rowdy, the Royal Rumble show wouldn't have been nearly as much fun to watch. Because I don't want to see John Cena wrestle Randy Orton either. I mean, I like both guys. I have nothing against either one of them. I'm not a Cena hater or an Orton hater. I think they're both incredibly talented, but I don't want to see these two guys fighting for the top belt in the company anymore. I've seen it.
Yeah, it's been 10 years. I mean, fuck. Hulk Hogan's only held the belt for 5 years tops in the WWE.
Yeah.
So it's like these guys have been in the top tier and fighting for the belts for nearly a decade at this point. It is time to move on to the new blood.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? If I were the commentators, I would be pissed off, because they're the ones who have to make excuses for why the fans at the live event are doing this. You know, like Jerry Lawler has to sound like an idiot and say, "Oh, these fans are, you know, they're chanting for Daniel Bryan, or they're chanting for Randy Savage or Chris Jericho. Oh, they're doing that to get in Randy Orton's head." And he has to say that and sound like an idiot when he knows that's not the truth, because the crowd is making the show look so bad. You know, so if I were the commentators, I'd be pissed off. If I were really anybody involved in the show, if I were John Cena, I would have gone backstage to Vince McMahon and I would have said, "Why are you giving these fans a show that they don't want and forcing them to shit on my match, you know? Because I'm going out there with Randy Orton. We're doing the best we can. We're putting on the best match we can put on, and they don't want to see it. Why are you making me go out and put on a match and work my ass off for something that these people are just going to shit on?
It is funny how a wrestling crowd works, because I've been to many live shows, been to many of Raws and TV tapings all my life, and it takes. I mean, I've sat in places where not much goes on, and I've sat in areas of the arena where it's like, my God, they've set me in heel heaven, because we're gonna raise some shit tonight. You know, it's heel heaven. Everybody likes the heels here. But that's really all it takes, is one of those little groups bonding together in a massive crowd like that to, you know, say, hey, let's chant for Chris Jericho. And it gets started, and then wait, and it goes crazy, because we're like, yeah, that's cool, Chris Jericho, let's chant for that. So that kind of stuff starts on a very small scale, but gets out of control after a while, because after they see that it is addictive and people are going to start chanting it, then it kind of just, you know, it fills up an hour of television time where you're just like, what's going on in the ring? Because I'm trying to pay attention to, what are they saying? What is that? What the hell are they just saying? I have no clue. Is that Michael Cole they're chanting for? Unprecedented.
Right. Well, because that's like, I mean, on the one hand, it's fun to watch it from home and be like, oh, they're chanting for Jerry Lawler, you know, they're chanting for JBL. But if they're doing that, then that means you're doing something wrong. If you're the one putting the show together, because they should be paying attention to what's going on in the ring. They shouldn't be chanting for Jerry Lawler. If he's just sitting there calling the match, who gives a fuck?
I guarantee you, when at WrestleMania 3, when you saw Hogan going like this on Andre, nobody was chanting for Gorilla Monsoon or shit in the crowd. They
Not
were
at
just
all.
popping for fucking Hogan, and that's the way wrestling should be. They should not have their attention diverted to the announcers, to the commentaries, to the referee, to people who aren't even on a WWE contract at this point.
Right.
So, yes, you're definitely doing something wrong, boring the shit out of your fans.
Well, you know, I was, because I actually watched the Rumble the morning after it happened, and my wife watched it with me. She watched most of it with me, and she's not like a huge wrestling fan. She doesn't, but she said after the show was over, and it was obvious to fan and non-fan alike that something had gone really wrong with that Royal Rumble pay-per-view. She said, she asked, has anything like this ever happened before? You know, has a live audience ever just completely rejected the show? And I couldn't think of any examples at the time. I've thought about it since then, and I've thought of a few examples. Nothing to that scale. I don't think it's ever happened where the crowd took a shit on a show, like a pay-per-view, as big as the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble is their second biggest show of the year. And for the live crowd to just completely say fuck this while the show is going on, and to fuck up the show with chants and yelling and everything, I don't think that's ever happened. But it reminded me a little bit of the "We Want Flair" chants in WCW in 1998, when Bischoff and Flair were having that real-life contract dispute, and Flair was off TV for a few months. And then that culminated in them bringing back the Four Horsemen that time in that great episode of Nitro, where Flair came back and he was crying, and Arn Anderson called him out to the ring. And, you know, it was a great moment. Before that happened, the crowds were kind of revolting with the "We Want Flair" chants. And then something similar happened in 1991 at the Great American Bash, when Flair had left the company, and it was when he eventually showed up later that summer in the WWF, but they were chanting "We Want Flair" at that Great American Bash show that had been advertised as Flair versus Luger and wound up being Flair versus Barry Windham. And it was sort of like a Cena-Orton situation where the live crowd was kind of shitting on the match, didn't care, spent most of the match chanting for Flair, and it was like, shit, it sucks to be Barry Windham and Lex Luger. You know, they're just trying to have a match, doing the best they can to get over with these people, and nobody wants to see it, and it's not their fault. And then you can take it back even further to in the 80s with the AWA when Vern Gagne refused to put the world title on Hulk Hogan until it was too late. And by the time Vern, according to whoever tells the story, there are different versions of the story, but the most commonly heard version that I've heard is that Hogan was over huge in the AWA. He was a monster, a huge babyface. Vern refused to put the world title on him until Hogan was essentially having one foot out the door. And then Vern said, "Oh, hey, do you want the world title?" And Hogan basically said, "See ya," and went to the WWF. Vince put his world title on him like a month later, and Hulkamania, everything, the rest is history.
Yeah, we just celebrated the anniversary. It didn't pass not too long ago. That just I think this last week it was the anniversary of Hulk Hogan's reign of WrestleMania. I think it's 30 years.
Yeah, his when he beat the Iron Sheik.
Yeah,
30 years. And the thing that makes the Daniel Bryan thing different from all of those, I think, other than the fact that it happened at a major pay-per-view, is that all those other things that I just mentioned were the fans reacting to real life stuff that to an extent the promoter and the wrestlers couldn't really control. I mean, the Flair thing in WCW in 1998, that wasn't a storyline that the fans didn't like. That was Ric Flair and Eric Bischoff in real life not being able to work together. The Hogan and Vern Gagne thing, that was like a real life situation. But the Daniel Bryan thing, Daniel Bryan has a contract. He's a member of the roster. You know, he's incredibly popular. I have to imagine he sells them a lot of merchandise. He puts on great matches. He's an employee in good standing. It's all about how he's being used. And I don't remember ever seeing a fan revolt like this that has lasted as long as this one has, that has manifested itself at major pay-per-view events, where it's all about the way a guy's being used. It's completely about the creative direction of the company. That's a new one, you know. And I think maybe the reason why it's this bad with Daniel Bryan, other than the fact that he's just a phenomenal talent and there's no reason why he shouldn't be the guy at this point, is that they've gotten behind guys in the past, in the last few years, and they've ultimately been ignored. Like to a lesser extent, you could talk about somebody like Zack Ryder, who got himself over purely on his own.
With YouTube channels and all
with
that.
His YouTube, with his YouTube show, and they when the "We Want Ryder" chants got so loud that they were forced to do something with him. They gave him the U.S. title for a couple of weeks, and then basically just forgot about him. And
well, what they did was they got him in a position to sign over the rights to his damn YouTube channel over to the WWE. They gave him that spotlight for a moment, and then they fizzled it out quite slowly. They owned the rights to his damn show, so woo! There went Zack Ryder. We fizzled that out.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so Ryder, they pretended to push Ryder, and then he went away. Even with something as huge as CM Punk's shoot, and his major main event push when he beat John Cena at Money in the Bank in 2011. When that happened, and when he cut that great promo. And then when he had the match with Cena and he won the title and he left the company, quote unquote, you know, he climbed over the guardrail with the title belt and just went home. Everybody was like, "Oh, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be huge. This is going to be like he's going to be like the new Stone Cold Steve Austin," you know. And they pissed it down their leg in 2 weeks, you know. And Punk ended up being in a much better position, and he ended up being the champion and held the title for over a year, and it was awesome. And he had a lot of great matches, including with Daniel Bryan. But John Cena was still the star of the show, and unless Punk was working with Cena or The Rock, when The Rock came back in, again, it was like nobody really cared about him. He was just another guy on the mid-card, even though he was supposedly the champion of the company. And now we have this Daniel, and you could say to an extent they did the same thing to Dolph Ziggler, where, you know, Ziggler wins Money in the Bank. People were chanting for him. People were saying, "We want Ziggler." He cashes in Money in the Bank the night after WrestleMania. The live crowd goes insane. It's a huge moment. and then again within like a month he's nobody.
Well, you gotta
So
realize, and Ziggler realizes this at this point that when you're getting a push and you're getting on top, the worst thing you could possibly do is do an interview with anybody and talk trash about other performers, especially Randy Orton, because you find
yeah.
yourself in a bit of punishment like you have for the last couple of months.
Yeah. But that's but you could even leave the Ziggler example out and you'd still get what I'm saying is that
Yeah.
they pretend to listen to the fans and then they ultimately just ignore whatever they were saying. And I think people are finally catching on to that. Enough of the audience are finally catching on. They're saying, look, you come out and you kiss our ass, and you have John Cena come out and say, we do this for you people. We all live to come into the ring and to perform for you people. And Triple H says things like, we have a 10,000 person focus group every time we put on a show, and the fans tell us what they like and what they don't like, and everybody kind of knows at this point, after almost a year of this Daniel Bryan stuff, that that's just horseshit. That they don't care.
I mean, yeah. For Christ's sake, you have your WWE app, and you ask all these WWE polls, and everybody votes. I mean, even who do you think will win the Royal Rumble? Even the fact that it started off as Batista, but certainly changed by the time the Royal Rumble rolled around. Mm-hmm. It's like these fans, people who are voting here, are telling you what they want, but you don't seem to be listening to that.
Right, exactly. And it's like, why are you even asking us to do this if it's not going to matter? Now, they did set themselves up at the end of Raw for there's a really easy way that they left themselves open that they could fix all of this. I don't think that they're going to do it. I don't think that this is what they're actually building towards. But if Vince, woke up on the right side of the bed this morning and decided we got to go with Daniel Bryan, there's a really easy way they can do it. The way they can do it is Bryan wins the title at Elimination Chamber, defends against Batista at Mania, which I think would be a pretty big match, and wins and beats Batista at WrestleMania. If they do that, then I think the fans will go home happy, and they won't have to worry about the crowd hijacking the show, because that, as embarrassing as it was at Royal Rumble, if the fans are chanting for Daniel Bryan in the main event of WrestleMania and he's not in the match, that's going to be pretty embarrassing, I would think. If I were Vince McMahon, if I were a wrestling promoter and the live crowd was shitting on the main event of my biggest event ever, I would feel a little embarrassed. And they can avoid that just by putting Daniel Bryan in the match and having him win.
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to do that.
I would go that way too. I mean, simply on as a promoter's knowledge that the fans are going with Daniel Bryan. You've locked down Batista to a 2-year contract, so he's going to be here no matter what. Let's just go this way. We got Batista in the main event. Let's try to get Daniel Bryan there in the main event and push that, and make the fans happy. And fuck all what Batista thinks, because we've locked him down to a 2-year contract.
Right. Well, and the rumors, the internet scuttlebutt is always, well, they tried Bryan with Orton in the fall and he didn't get ratings, which I think is bullshit, because they booked him like a loser. If they had Daniel Bryan come out and kick Randy Orton in the head every week and then beat him for the title, and then ratings didn't move, I would say, okay, you're right, maybe the Daniel Bryan thing is just not what it's cracked up to be. But they had him come out and get his ass kicked every week, and then he couldn't win a match. So no wonder he didn't boost the ratings, because there was nothing to watch. It was just the fans, the company cock teasing the fans. But they could put the title on him. They could have him go over Batista at WrestleMania. They could make him into a strong champion. And if nobody watches the show after that, if he's a failure, that's fine. Wrestling goes on forever. Put the belt on Batista. See how that works. I mean,
think of him as Obamacare for wrestling. Let's give it a try and see how it works. And if it fucking fails, then we'll back out of it at that point. But let's give it a try.
Right, exactly. Because they haven't really given it a try yet. You know, they might say, like, if you ask Vince or you ask Triple H or you ask one of the writers, that might be the excuse. They might say, well, we tried him. He had a whole 4-month program with Randy Orton. Yeah, but you booked him like a loser. They never booked Steve Austin that way. They never booked John Cena that way. They haven't even booked CM Punk that way for a while. They used to, but they haven't for a while. I mean, those guys are booked strong and dangerous, and they come out and they kick ass. And they didn't build up Steve Austin's feud with Vince McMahon by having him come out and look like a punk every week. I mean,
the worst Vince could do to him was have Austin arrested, which was, that was pretty simplistic. But Austin would drive a damn beer truck down to the ring and really buck the Authority, and The Rock would do the same thing. Of course, we're talking during the Attitude Era, so things are a little bit different at this point. So I don't know. I do like the way they are rolling the ball with Triple H being the Authority. The only issue I take with that was if Randy Orton's going to be the heel, he should be a bigger heel than the Authority, because it seems like he has problems with them as well. So Randy Orton should be the bigger Authority and not have the Authority pushing him around if he wants to be a successful champion. But I kind of like that. But yeah, we're not in the same era as the Attitude Era where we were at that point. I think that the times have changed. So, and I'm okay with that.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with the babyface getting his ass kicked before the big match to put some heat on him. I mean, that's fine. That's wrestling 101. I mean, in Austin, there were lots of times where Steve Austin would have the shit kicked out of him before a major match. But the point is, he eventually was able to get over on the heels. He won the big match. He won the titles. He didn't look like a punk. He didn't look like a loser. And that's how they made Daniel Bryan look during that program with Randy Orton. And actually, that's how they made Orton look too, which is one of the most confusing things about that program to me. Was Orton looked like a loser too, because he couldn't beat Daniel Bryan either. He never beat him clean. He needed either Big Show or Triple H or Shawn Michaels to help him beat him every time he beat him. And then they just kind of left that hanging. They were just like, okay, we're done with that. And Orton never beat Bryan, and Bryan certainly never got his win over Orton. They just kind of were like, no, never mind, forget it, we're done. Daniel Bryan's feuding with the Wyatt family now, so forget about that. And people didn't forget about it.
Well, you never know. Now John Cena has his attention diverted with the Wyatt family, so that leaves a spot open for John Cena's former spot, because the Wyatt family is going to probably feud with him at this point.
Yeah, and I actually like that. I was skeptical about that, because that was another rumored match for WrestleMania that I read on the internet a couple weeks ago. They said, Cena's WrestleMania opponent is going to be Bray Wyatt, and I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. And I love Bray Wyatt, but I was like, there's no way he's working with Cena at WrestleMania. But after that match that he had with Daniel Bryan, I'm like, hell yeah. Because now you see, now he can go. He had a great match with a great wrestler, and then they did the angle where they all attacked Cena later on in the show, and now I'm like, okay, I could totally buy this. It's not that hard, It's not that hard. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing Cena versus Wyatt. I'm Cena's probably going to beat him, because I think they'll probably do the thing they used to do with Hulk Hogan, where they build up a big heel like Bray Wyatt, and then they just kind of feed him to the monster babyface, in this case John Cena. He'll be like Cena's, his version of like Earthquake or King Kong Bundy,
I'm just reflecting when I remember Earthquake coming out of the audience to I forget who was it. Dino Bravo doing the push-ups, and
yes.
I can't remember who, Kempatera. I can't remember who he's facing off against. It was a push-up contest, and they brought Earthquake out of the audience.
Yes,
I'm trying to remember.
That.
I'm remembering.
I remember that. It was. I'm pretty sure it was Dino Bravo, because he was managed by Jimmy Hart, and Earthquake was a Jimmy Hart guy when he.
No, I think it was Frenchie at the time.
Was it?
I think it was Frenchie at the time.
No, I thought it was Jimmy Hart, but anyway, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Dino Bravo doing the push-ups. But yeah, I love when they do that. He was just in the audience. This guy who's obviously a professional wrestler.
A Santino Marella.
Yes. Exactly. I like that. I mean, it's old school. It's ridiculous. You know that like if it was a real sporting event, this would never happen. They don't just pull people out of the crowd, but it's awesome when they do that, or when guys come through the crowd and they like jump in the ring and attack somebody. Like I don't know, I'm a sucker for that, even though it's completely ridiculous.
Here's a little inside information for you: the security guards on shows that you see live on Raw, they're fucking restless.
See, now you totally ruined it for me. It's like it's knowing how the magic tricks are done.
A lot of times they are. I mean, my friend Bill Bain, he has worked with the WWE a lot. He's done some shows with ECW and worked like Vladimir Kozlov and some of the shows. Of course, he is what is considered a job or enhancement talent enhancement talent. But I know that he was like a backstage bodyguard for a pay-per-view when they had the fake Obama there, and he was one of the acolytes or something when the Undertaker came back and beat the crap out of him. So,
cool.
And he was just recently there when I think Ryback he speared Mark Henry through the wall.
Oh,
but
cool.
Speaking of Ryback, holy crap, he teams up with Curtis Axel. They face the Usos, and how far have we fallen? I know the Usos are a great tag team. I want to give credit to WWE right now because I think tag teams are going in the right direction here because it seems like more are forming, and I'm liking that a lot. But Uso pins Ryback to win that match on Raw last night. And I was like, holy crap, how far have we fallen?
Yeah.
But the best match, of course, was the Real Americans versus Rey Mysterio and Sin Cara. That match was absolutely an awesome tag team match. Greatest, probably to me, the best match of the night for Raw.
Oh, I think it was a great match too, and I've come around on the Real Americans, and it's because of that. Because I love tag teams and I like tag team wrestling, and they've been together for. I mean, it feels like they've been together for a while. They really haven't been together that long, but it's because tag teams break up so often now. It feels like they've been together for a while. And I love Antonio Cesaro, and at first I was irritated that they just put him into a tag team because I was like, man, this guy could be a top guy. This guy is amazing. He's incredible in the ring. He's in great shape. He's a good talker. Like this, why isn't he wrestling John Cena? But now that they've been together for a while, they almost always have great matches. They get to work with pretty much everybody, because they're like one of those tag teams that just, if you need a tag team match, oh hey, throw Cesaro and Swagger in there, So they've worked with, undercard guys like the Usos, and they've also worked with like John Cena, and so, and they've become a really good team. And I kind of hope they stick together for a while. I would like to see them do something, like I would kind of like, if like, I don't know what the plan is. I assume that that Cody and Goldust are going to be moving more into their breakup angle now. So I don't know where they're planning to move the tag titles to once they get them off the Outlaws. But I would like to see Cesaro and Swagger get those titles at some point and just keep them for a while, because I think they would be an awesome heel champion team.
Well, I don't know. I mean, during this week of Raw, I mean, we saw Zeb Coulter try to pump Jack Swagger up by slapping him. Yeah, so it's like, okay, so that worked this time, and he went in there, and he really laid it down to Sin Cara and Rey Mysterio. But is that going to work time and time again if you keep that up? So that could be setting up something to push them in the right direction. And the people, I think, they're ready to be behind Antonio. They are
absolutely.
Ready.
Totally.
They recognize how impressive he is and what he can do, and I think they would absolutely be behind him 100% if he turned him babyface. So I think they want to work with Jack Swagger and see what they can do there to tweak that.
Yeah, and when he shows up on NXT, he's a babyface now. Cesaro. I mean, he gets a complete babyface reaction, even when he acts like a heel. He gets a total babyface reaction on NXT. But NXT is a little different. I think NXT is almost entirely smart mark internet fans who go to those NXT shows, and they just cheer for whoever they like, and they don't care if they're a face or a heel. But yeah, Cesaro is incredible. I don't know. I mean, they like that giant swing, which
Mhm.
is good for him.
It's gimmicky.
It's gimmicky, but it's something that it gives him a reason to put him on the show, which so I like it for that reason. So I assume he's going to be doing that to somebody at WrestleMania. But you know, things like that. I mean, I like things like that, but in a way, they work against guys because you could take a guy, an incredible talent like Antonio Cesaro, and put him in a really important match on WrestleMania. But I think instead what they're going to do is they're going to put him in kind of a meaningless match, but he's going to get that giant swing spot, and the company, like the logic, the Vince McMahon logic is going to be, oh, see, we gave him his WrestleMania moment
Did I
because he got
mention
the
Santino Marella,
yeah.
the snake?
Yeah, exactly. That. Well, I want to. You wanted to talk a little bit about Pat Patterson as for our
Sure.
Legend of the Week, and I think it's an appropriate pick because not only was Patterson an outstanding wrestler, but he was a great booker too. And I wonder if Pat was still booking the show, would we have some of the problems that we're complaining about?
No,
Uh,
I think Pat was more probably, he was great and he stood up for what he said pretty much what he believed in, and gave a lot of opinions. But in the end of the day, you don't become so high in the WWE by saying no all the time.
oh yeah, I mean, he was definitely a company guy.
Yeah.
And I think, when it came down to it, when it's always been Vince's show ever since he bought the company from his dad. And even if Pat Patterson might have had a different idea, when Vince said, this is what we're doing, I'm sure Pat said, okay, let's do it. You
Uh,
know,
some of his best gimmicks, I loved it when he come out there with Briscoe, and they were pretty much Vince McMahon's yes men, and you always see them in
yeah,
the background, and they come out and do the whole Hulk Hogan spots and do wrestling matches in their 60s
yeah,
or 70s, but it was great. But yeah, Pat Patterson, he was a hell of a wrestler back in the day. He is one of the few that most people know he is openly gay.
right.
It has spawned a lot of inside jokes on Pat Patterson in the day, especially when you're growing up in the day when being gay isn't socially acceptable at all. But yeah, he
Yeah,
started out in 1958. He was a pretty boy, Pat Patterson, and he'd come out and he'd be wearing makeup and he flamboyant clothes and everything, and he'd carry a poodle with him. And that was kind of his career at the point. He wrestled out in San Francisco for many years and won many championships out there with various partners. I think the most famous one he's known for is with Ray Stevens,
yeah,
and
great tag team.
they were the Blonde Bombers, I believe.
Yeah.
Um,
And, Ray Stevens, of course, also had a great team with Nick Bockwinkel.
sure.
So great little tag team connection there. But yeah, and Patterson, the cool thing about Pat Patterson is, like you say, he had that early part of his career where he was kind of a pretty boy heel. But then later on, especially toward the end of his active career when he was in the WWF, man, he had some of the most brutal matches
Hmm.
with Sergeant Slaughter, with Bob Backlund, just these really, really stiff, bloody brawls that were just incredible. And a lot of those matches from the 70s and even in the early 80s, if you watch them and you're a wrestling fan from today and you're used to seeing the usual style of like a modern wrestling match, a lot of those older matches can seem kind of boring to some people. Like if you watch a Bruno Sammartino match or even a Superstar Billy Graham match to a certain extent, like it feels like they move kind of slow and they're sort of long. But man, some of those Pat Patterson, Sergeant Slaughter matches feel like really modern wrestling matches. They're really fast paced. They're really stiff. They look really legit, and they're just terrific matches.
I've always liked listening to Pat Patterson do interviews. I shared one with you earlier,
Yeah,
which was his interview for when he won the Intercontinental Championship. Um, and of course you can pick up by the way he talks, that he's Canadian. He's from Quebec.
yeah,
But I've always had a fondness for people that talk like Rick Martel, who also you can pick up as and
mm,
Jacques. from the Mountie.
Jacques
Jacques
Rougeau.
Rougeau.
Yeah.
People with those strong Canadian accents, it's like I'm attracted to because they're a little bit different. And, you know, like Antonio Cesaro, it's like I like the imports from wrestling.
Yeah, and I like yeah, that was you showed me a video of his first interview after he won the Intercontinental title in that made up tournament in Rio de Janeiro, which is one of my favorite wrestling stories.
Yes.
That they
It's a WWE April Fool's joke that he won a Rio de Janeiro tournament for that Intercontinental Championship.
Yeah, there was no tournament. They just made up the new title and gave it to him. I love that. But yeah, one of the top comments on the YouTube page of that video was someone saying like, "Boy, nobody back then could talk." And I thought that was a good interview. Yeah. I love that Patterson interview because he's not out there entertaining the audience and throwing out catchphrases and trying to be funny. He sounds like he means what he's saying, and that's so important. He sounds like he means what he's saying. That's important to a wrestling promo. That's important if you want to be like an actor. People have to believe that you mean what you're saying. And those old school wrestlers back in the day, say what you will about, so-and-so wasn't a good talker, but man, when Pat Patterson got on the microphone, when Don Morocco got on the microphone,
whoa.
They weren't...
Yeah. Oh, whoa. Did you just say Don Morocco?
Let me tell you something. Don Morocco is not known as a great talker, but Don Morocco cut a promo.
It was real.
On Jimmy Snuka. Okay, yeah, you're right. Don Morocco did have like marbles in his mouth for a lot of his promos. But one of my all-time favorite promos, I swear to you, is a Don Morocco promo. And it was one that he cut, I think it was backstage before his match with Jimmy Snuka at Madison Square Garden, where Snuka did the famous time that he did the Superfly splash off of the cage.
Yeah, the one everybody knows.
Yeah, the one where Mick Foley was in the audience. And Morocco, and it's on the Intercontinental title DVD that they released a long time ago, the best of the history of the Intercontinental title. When you watch that match, they show you the promos beforehand, and there is a promo with Don Morocco, and I think I can't remember who was interviewing him. I don't know if Mean Gene was there quite yet, but he was sitting backstage on the bench in the locker room, and he just cuts this really calm, like naturalistic promo, talking about how he's gonna step in the ring with Snuka, and he's ready, and he hopes that Snuka's ready, and he just seems totally relaxed and totally calm, and it sounds like it's like a promo that like a boxer would give before a boxing match. Like it sounds real. And I know Morocco has this reputation as being a horrible promo, but that one time he got it right, and he got it so right. It's one of my very favorite wrestling promos. So I always mention Don Morocco when I talk about my favorite promos, even though in general he's not considered a great talker. But those guys back then, they meant what they said. Mm-hmm. And I want to wrap up here in a minute, but one thing we haven't talked about, and it's a great segue, is
worst promo to best promo.
Yes. Best promo, because Jake the Snake's going into the Hall of Fame.
Yes, he is. I said it last week, and we both agreed that Jake the Snake should go into the WWE Hall of Fame. And I don't know if they're watching this show, and they might be, but they made it so. Jake is going in. It's about time.
It is about time.
Awesome. It is awesome. I felt good about that.
It's about time. And, I was thinking when the WWE Network starts, because like when they made that announcement and they talked about like all the content that's going to be available the first day, and they said all the pay-per-views are going to be on there. And someone said on one of the wrestling blogs I was reading, they said, well, what's the first thing you're going to watch when you get the network? What's the very first thing you're going to watch? And my first thought was I wanted to watch this tag team match from a Clash of Champions in 1991. It was when Ricky Steamboat came back to WCW, and it was Ricky Steamboat as the surprise mystery partner for Dustin Rhodes versus Larry Zbyszko and Arn Anderson. It's amazing tag team match. It's one of my all-time favorite matches. But I don't know if the Clash of Champions are going to be on there. All they've said is that it's going to be all the pay-per-views. They didn't say anything about the clashes, so I don't know if it's even going to be there at first. But one thing I imagine will be there is the almost forgotten WWF pay-per-view from 1991, from that same year, This Tuesday in Texas. where Jake has that match with Macho Man, and then he cuts that incredible promo after the match where he talks about how it turned him on to jerk Elizabeth up off her knees and smack her in the face and DDT Macho Man in front of her, and it's just like it's the best promo I've ever seen. And the thing that's so awesome about it is when Jake is cutting that promo, just as he seemed whenever he cut any of his great promos, he seems like he means every word he's saying. He's looking right into the camera, and whether he's a baby face or a heel, he means every single word he's saying. That's what made him such an amazing promo.
I always liked Jake the Snake because he was more like a Sam Elliott of wrestling. You know what I'm saying? Have a drink or two, ladies and gentlemen. It'll make you feel good, make the soul feel great. I'm Doc Hollywood, and you can take it from me. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, he's still a great promo, and I want us to end it here in just a minute, but I just have to get this last little Jake story out. Even now, in his older years, you know, since he's gotten sober and he's been living with DDP and he's gotten his life back together, hopefully for good this time. He's still a good promo because he made a YouTube video like last year when he was, you know, finally starting to get into the DDP thing, and he talked about how he had lost weight and he hadn't had a drink for this many months, and he was getting into shape, and he said, you know, I just want to thank everybody who supported me and who believed in me. I appreciate you, and I also appreciate those of you who didn't believe in me and didn't think I could do it, because I love breaking it off in your ass. Always have and always will. And I thought, damn, I wish he could go on Raw and say something like that.
That's great. That is great.
And he had like the Jake, like the smirk, like the smile that you were doing into the camera a moment ago, where he kind of raises his eyebrow and he's just like, huh? Right? Fuck you. And it was hilarious and it was amazing. So yeah, that's, you know, whatever they do to fuck up WrestleMania, whether it's an awesome show, as I certainly hope it will be, Jake going into the Hall of Fame, I mean, that is such a big deal to me, and I can't wait to see him give his acceptance speech, and he totally deserves to be there. It's a joke without him. Now we just need to get Macho Man's ass in there.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you, I'm tired of waiting for that one. Yeah.
Right?
Food for thought, really, for the next show. Honestly, I watched all of Raw, and I watched what was dubbed as the Battle of Cleveland match, which involved Dolph Ziggler and The Miz. Yeah. I don't know what it was. I thought it was a pretty good match, but I got a different feel for that to think that those two right there could make an awesome tag team if you can wrap your mind around it. What do you think?
I think that's awesome. Yeah, they're both much better as heels than they are as baby faces.
Yeah.
So let's wrap this fucker up for this week. I hope those of you who sent me anguished Facebook messages after the Royal Rumble saying, I can't wait for the show. Exactly. I swear, I guess it means people are watching the show, but I got these like anguished Facebook messages from people going, I hope the show is good this week because god damn it, you know, like I don't have any friends who talk about wrestling and I need to talk about this shit. Like people are so upset about the Rumble and Daniel Bryan and everything. So I hope it was therapeutic for those of you who watched.
Feel free to ask your questions, people. I am the doctor, and I will help you out with your problems. So ask your questions, and I'll help you out.
There you go. See, we're a full-service wrestling show here. So anyway, that's going to be it for this week. Doc, thank you as always for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you guys, everybody, for watching. We're going to come back and do this again for you next week. So until then, take care.
Good night.